Here we are back for the second part of the lesson, and I want to focus on this idea of the tenses of the perfect system being completed actions. There are three different tenses, the perfect, the pluperfect, and the future perfect, and yet they all express completed actions or actions completed, which means in the past it's done. So how do you have three different time frames for completion of action? That's what we're going to take a look at. The perfect tense is talking about an action that is completed in the definite past. Let's look at those examples first. I want to focus specifically on the first two. How do we know that they take place in the definite past? First of all, we have a word clue. Yesterday is the word clue. Yesterday is considered a specific time in the past. And in the second sentence, we have last week, which is also considered a specific time in the past. Notice that the verbs in both of these are phrased walked and did build. So our understanding is this, that the perfect tense, when we want to communicate that an action was completed at a specific time in the past and then not done anymore, we use the perfect tense translation of walked, which is a simple past tense, or you can use the helping verb did with that. Last week I did build a house. Not doing it this week, and I didn't do it the week before, I did it last week. Those are two examples of how the perfect system or perfect tense can be used in English and in Latin. In English, the perfect tense also has this idea of an action that began in the past and continues into the present. The perfect tense in Latin is used to express the definite time in the past as well as this indefinite time in the past. In English, however, the two forms of the verb will look a little bit different. When I want to say that an action began at some point in the past that's indefinite, like many times, and it continues into the present. So since I was 5, he has given me a birthday present. Started when I was 5, continues into the present. When I want to express these ideas, I must use the helping verb has or have in English. In English, we call this the present perfect because it starts in the past and continues into the present. This is still the perfect tense in Latin, and you will use the same set of inflections to express this action as well as expressing these actions. It will have to be your reading of the text, which will help you to understand what you're trying to communicate. Or when you're writing, you'll have to decide, am I communicating a once and done action, walked, did walk, or am I communicating an action that started in the past and is still continuing today? Same tense, the perfect tense. What should be your takeaway? The perfect tense can be translated into English by using the simple past tense of the verb, walked. You could say did with the simple past tense of the verb, like did walk, did build, or you can put has or have with them as a helping verb. And this explains what those ideas are that they communicate. The pluperfect tense communicates an action that took place in the past prior to another action which took place in the past. So this is about sequence of past actions. The one that took place first must be expressed using the pluperfect tense, which in English is expressed with the helping verb had. Let's take a look at these examples. Jupiter killed Asclepius because the young doctor had offended Pluto. We're talking about two actions in the past, the killing of Asclepius and the offending of the doctor. The one that took place first was the offending of the doctor. And I know that because of the word because. Jupiter killed Asclepius. Why? Because of this action that already happened. Make sure that in English you're using the helping verb had to express what you see after the because. King Admetus lived because his wife had sacrificed her life for him. King Admetus was getting ready to be sacrificed, and then his wife showed up and sacrificed her life, and then he continued to live. So King Admetus lived. Why? Because his wife had sacrificed her life. By the time or when Hercules arrived, what happened when he arrived? Well, it had already happened. Acestes had already died. You might think that the inclusion of the helping verb had in these English sentences is extra, not needed, because we have words like because or when and already. But the truth is that if you don't include the had, even though you have the because in both of these sentences or the when and the already, you're not using the correct tense. Pointer for those of you getting ready to take PSATs and SAT tests. These are the kinds of questions that show up when they want to know what's wrong with this sentence. And they ask you, is this the problem? Is this the problem? Is this the problem? Sometimes this use of the pluperfect tense makes its way into those kinds of questions. So be very certain that you understand that the pluperfect tense, which is had plus the past participle form of the verb in English, is used to communicate sequence of actions when two actions in the past are being talked about at the same time. You must use the pluperfect to talk about the one that happened first. Now, on to the future perfect tense, which is just what it sounds like. Future means in the future. Perfect means completed. So the future perfect tense is an action completed in the future. When you look at it in English, it will have two helping verbs. The future tense helping verb will, and the perfect tense helping verb have. Listen to the sentences. It makes perfect sense. By the time Hercules arrives, that's in the future, what's going to have happened and be completed? Acestes will have died. King Admetus hopes that before Apollo leaves, what will happen? That the fields will have produced much grain. So that he's hoping that that action will be completed. When you talk about history, by the time a Roman girl reaches age 17, she will have been married. So it's like we're talking about the past, but it's the future of her life. So that's why we're using the future perfect there. And will have given birth to at least one child. We use the future perfect tense a lot in English. We just don't really think a lot about it. So what is it that you need to take away from this part of the lesson? How do we translate each of the perfect system tenses, the future perfect, the pluperfect, and the perfect tense in English? And what exactly are they communicating? You're going to be asked a few questions to be able to see if you can identify from the look of the tense in the sentence in English what tense we're actually dealing with. That's next for you to do in the question section.